Hey, how are you? I'm so happy to be here today. And in honor of our storytime classes, I wanted to share one of my favorite books of all times. It is a book by Chris Van Allsburg, who is an amazing children's author who writes very intriguing and very interesting stories that I find interesting myself. And the book that we are going to listen to today is called The Garden of Abdul Gasazi. So, of course, the possibilities with any book are endless. I personally like to use this book for inferential questions and prediction making, and I will model a few during the read. So let's get started. The Garden of Abdul Gasazi by Chris Van Allsburg. Six times, Miss Hester's dog Fritz had bitten dear cousin Inez. So when Miss Hester received an invitation to visit Inez, she was not surprised to read, P.S. Please leave your dog home. On the day of her visit, Miss Hester asked young Alan Mitz to stay with Fritz and give him his afternoon walk. What a nice build-up, and definitely an opportunity to ask kids what they think might happen. As soon as Miss Hester left, Fritz ran into the parlor. He loved to chew on the chairs and shake the stuffing out of the pillows, but Alan was ready. All morning long, he kept Fritz from sinking his sharp little teeth into the furniture. Finally, the dog gave up and fell asleep, exhausted. Alan took a nap too, but first he hid his head under his shirt, hats being of Fritz's favorite things to cheer. An hour later, Alan quickly awoke when Fritz gave him a bite on the nose. The bad-mannered dog was ready for his afternoon walk. Alan fastened Fritz's leash, and the dog dragged him out of the house. Walking along, they discovered a small white bridge at the side of the road. Alan decided to let Fritz lead the way across. Now, what a great opportunity to ask, where might this bridge lead? What might they see? What might happen? Some distance beyond the bridge, Alan stopped to read a sign. It said, absolutely, positively, no dogs allowed in this garden. At the bottom, it was signed Abdul Gasazi, a retired magician. Behind the sign stood a vine-covered wall with an open doorway. Alan took the warning quite seriously. He turned to leave, but as soon as he did, Fritz gave a tremendous tug and snapped right out of his collar. He bolted straight ahead through the open door with Alan running right behind him. Now we know that Mr. Gasazi did not want any animals in his garden, so what might happen? Fritz, stop, you bad dog, cried Alan, but the dog simply ignored him. Down shadowed paths and across sunlit lawns they raced, deeper and deeper into the garden. Finally, Alan drew close enough to grab hold of Fritz, but as he reached out, he slipped and fell. Fritz barked with laughter as he galloped out of sight. Alan slowly picked himself up. He knew he had to find Fritz before Mr. Gasazi discovered him. Bruised and tired, he hurried off into the dog's direction. Will he find him? Will he not? Will Mr. Gasazi get to him first? And what might happen then? After a long search, Alan was ready to give up. He was afraid he might never find Fritz. Then he came upon fresh dog prints. Slowly, he followed Fritz's tracks along a path that led into a forest. The dirt path ended and the brick walk began. There were no more tracks to follow, but Alan was certain that Fritz must be just ahead. Alan started running. In front of him, he could see a clearing in the forest. As he came dashing out of the woods, he stopped as quickly as if he had run up against a wall, for there in front of him stood a truly awesome sight. It was the house of Gasazi. Alan nervously climbed the great stairs, convinced Fritz had come this way and been captured. I absolutely love the vocabulary. It gives an opportunity to really start so many conversations with kids and discuss meaning and use the picture cues to help them figure out the meaning of those words. But let's continue. The boy's heart was pounding when he arrived at the huge door. What feeling was he experiencing? What does the pounding heart mean? He took a deep breath and reached for the bell, but before he touched it, the door swung open. There, in the shadows of the hallway, stood Gasazi the Great. "Greetings, do come in," was all that he said. Why didn't Alan have to ring the doorbell? That's interesting. Alan followed Gasazi into a large room, and when the magician turned around, Alan quickly apologized for letting Fritz into the garden. He politely asked that if Mr. Gasazi had Fritz, would he please give him back? The magician listened carefully and then, smiling, said, "Certainly you may have your little Fritzy. Follow me." With those words, he went to the door and let Alan back outside. Ooh, what's outside? They were walking across the lawn when suddenly Gasazi stopped by a gathering of ducks. He began to speak in a voice that was more like a growl. "I detest dogs. They dig up my flowers. They chew on my trees. Do you know what I do to dogs I find in my garden?" "What?" whispered Alan, almost afraid to hear the answer. "I turn them into ducks," bellowed Gasazi. In horror, Alan looked at the birds in front of him. When one duck came forward, Gasazi said, "There's your Fritz." Alan begged the magician to change Fritz back. "Impossible," he answered. "Only time can do that. This spell may last years, or perhaps just a day. Now take your dear bird, and please do not come back." When Alan took the bird in his arms, it tried to give him a bite. "Good old boy," Alan said sadly as he patted the bird on the head. "You really haven't changed much." Why did he say that? Hopefully it's going to bring the child back to the beginning of the book to remember that the dog was quite a biter. With tears in his eyes, he started for home. Behind him, Alan could hear Gasazi laughing. As he approached the stairway, a gust of wind took Alan's hat, sailing right off his head. Running along with one arm, reaching for the hat, Alan lost his hold on Fritz. The duck flew out ahead and grabbed the hat in midair. But instead of landing, he just kept on flying, higher and higher, until he disappeared in the afternoon clouds. Oh no. So what is going to happen next? How is Alan going to tell Miss Hester about this? Alan just stood and stared at the empty sky. "Goodbye, old fellow," he called out sadly, sure that Fritz was gone forever. At least he had something to chew on. Slowly, one step after another, Alan found his way back to the garden gate and over the bridge. It was sunset by the time he reached Miss Hester's. Lights were on, and he knew she must be home. With a heavy heart, he approached the door, wondering how Miss Hester would take the news. When Miss Hester came to the door, Alan blurted out his incredible story. He could barely hold back the tears. Then, racing out the kitchen, dog foot on his nose, came Fritz. Alan couldn't believe his eyes. "I am afraid Mr. Gasazi played a trick on you," said Miss Hester, trying to hide a smile. "Fritz was in the front yard when I returned. He must have found his own way home while you were with Mr. Gasazi. You see, Alan, no one can really turn dogs into ducks. That old magician just made you think that duck was Fritz." And while this seems like this is the end of the story, it is not. And this is what I love about Chris Van Allsburg's stories. There's always more. There's always something else at the end to surprise you. Alan felt very silly. He promised himself he would never be fooled like that again. He was too old to believe in magic. Miss Hester watched from the porch as Alan waved goodbye and hurried down the road to go home. And then she called out to Fritz, who was playfully running around the front yard. He came trotting up the front steps with something in his mouth and dropped it at Miss Hester's feet. "Why, you bad dog," she said, "what are you doing with Alan's hat?" And this is where one is left to wonder. Was that dog, in fact, turned into a duck? Did he find his own way home? Then what is Alan's hat doing there? I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I did. And join us for some story time at Exceptional Explorers, where we'll get to explore a lot more interesting stories. Thank you.